everyone, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Brooke and we're filming the first ever video in my new apartment. Isn't that so exciting? So this is my setup here. Y'all are gonna see a lot more of it in my next video coming out, which is going to be a lot of like getting ready for school and such stuff. But today, of course, we are gonna be talking all things Disney, and particularly what it's like to take a solo trip to Disney World. This is a question I get a lot after I took my very first solo trip in August of this past year, and it's something people are always messaging me about, wondering what it's like to take a solo trip and just generally having questions about it. So I wanted to put together a whole video answering those questions, along with just giving you all my tips and tricks to help you decide whether or not taking a solo trip is right for you. Also, we're working with natural lighting today, which I have not done in a very long time, so I'm just hoping all goes well, because the sun is like slowly starting to creep over to me too bright, but we'll see how it goes. So let's just jump right on into it. First off, I wanted to go over all the different parts of a Disney trip, the things you need to think about when you're going solo, and just talk a little bit about what I did and what your different options are when you are traveling alone. So first off, you're gonna have to think about how you're getting to Florida. A very common way, obviously, is to fly. A lot of people are very concerned about flying alone. This is something that I have very quickly gotten used to. I had done solo flights previous to this trip, so I wasn't totally concerned about it, but flying alone can be really intimidating, especially if you are not a frequent flyer. My best tips for when you are flying alone is to be familiar with the airports and try to avoid layovers. Layovers can be super stressful. So if you're on a direct flight, be familiar with the airport that you're entering into, the map of what it looks like, maybe even plan out if you're gonna get food at the airport, what kind of food you're gonna get, along with just like, where are you going? I normally fly out of Toronto, and out of Toronto, I personally like flying out of Terminal 3 the best, so I normally fly with WestJet. But if you are going to a new terminal that you're not familiar with, definitely check out a map so you kind of know where you're going, what you're doing. If you're parking at the airport, make sure you know where that garage is and how much it's going to cost you, along with how you get from that garage to the airport. Just make sure you do your research. If you do have any issues, just talk to one of the employees there, and I'm sure they'll be able to help you out. On the actual flight, it's not a big deal at all. People fly alone all the time. No one's even going to question you twice about it. Definitely talk to the people next to you if there's anyone next to you. Whether or not you pay for a seat is totally up to you. If you are flying alone and don't pay for a seat, just be aware you're probably going to get stuck with a middle seat. But flying alone is actually really simple and easy, and something I enjoy doing a lot. Actually, I find it very peaceful. You can just kind of put your headphones in, ignore the world on the flight, and it's quite simple and easy. I really enjoy it. Once you get to Orlando, you're going to want to figure out transportation options. For Disney, I always use Magical Express. Obviously, that's not an option anymore. So you can now use Mears Connect, which is basically just exactly like Magical Express, but it does cost a little bit of money. And personally, if I was going down to Disney World solo again, this is the option I would choose. It's going to be about $32 round trip for you. You can also rent a car, but that is going to be more expensive. And then you also need to be aware that you're driving on Orlando roads, which are a little busier and a little hectic and full of tourists who don't know where they're going. You could also take an Uber to wherever you're going. I know sometimes when people are traveling alone though, this might be some sort of a safety concern of theirs. So that's personally why I like taking the Mears Connect. It's going to be your cheapest option, and it's also a lot safer in my opinion. As for hotels, I always like to stay on Disney property, and that's what I'm going to recommend for any solo traveler going to Disney World. Pay that little bit extra, get a Disney Valley Resort, and stay on Disney property. The main reason that I like to do this is to avoid Ubers. If you're renting a car, maybe might be a different story, but if you're traveling solo, Disney hotels can be really valuable because there is that transportation option, and you don't have to worry about the safety of an Uber or a Lyft or a shuttle driver that you're not familiar with. If you're taking a shuttle from an offsite hotel, they're only going to drop you off at the transportation and ticket center, no matter what park you're trying to go to. So that means extra transportation on top of that. I just find it a lot more hectic whether you're renting a car or taking a shuttle from an offsite hotel versus staying on Disney property. I personally also feel a lot safer staying on Disney property. It's something I'm a lot more comfortable with. I know that there's cast members around. I know it's well lit, something that is super important to me. When you're going solo, you're also going to want to consider where exactly you're spending your time. There are safe places you can go all over Orlando, and I am coming at this with a huge safety perspective because it is something I, as a woman in my 20s, worry about a lot, is safety, and it is something you should be aware of. Orlando in general is a fairly safe city, but no matter where you are, there could definitely be problems. So it's just important to be safe at all times. You're gonna wanna look at where you wanna go and how you're gonna get there, and you're gonna wanna plan that in advance. If you've never done a solo trip before, I would recommend just going to Disney or just going to Universal, not mixing it up too much, just so you can kind of get used to the feeling of being there alone. Planning out where you spend your time, how you're gonna get there, and knowing the areas where you're going is super important. And then let's talk about how long should you do a solo trip for. And this is gonna vary for everyone. Some people like to do really long solo trips, some people don't like to do more than a weekend alone. For me personally, I did an 8-day solo trip, and at the time I thought it was a little long, but looking back on it, I think it was the perfect amount because I got to do everything I wanted to do. I got to spend time at the pool, I got to relax, which you don't normally get to do at Disney, but then I also got to go on all of the rides and attractions, and I got to do everything. Mind you, I was also going at a very low time of year, so the wait times were low, so I literally did get to go on everything. Are you a person that normally likes to spend time alone, or are you more of a person who likes to spend time with people? If you're more of a person who likes to spend time with people, a shorter trip might be better for you. If you're very worried about going solo for the first time, I would suggest just doing a couple days, maybe a long weekend, just to try it out and see how it goes versus a longer trip. I had been to Disney solo for park days before. I had never been like overnight solo, but when I was on my Disney college programs, I would do an entire day at the theme parks without anyone else, just me by myself, because all my friends were working or whatever. So I already kind of knew what it was going to be like going there alone. So I already knew I enjoyed it, and I already kind of knew what to expect. So that's why I chose to do an 8-day trip. But if you're kind of unsure, maybe go for that shorter trip. I did also want to talk about something else that a lot of people worry about, which is it weird to go alone? And I don't think so. So I was also very concerned about this at first, especially with dining. That was my big concern, and also with rides. So like I said, I had done days on my college program where I did go alone, so that helps me kind of get over the hump when they ask you at the front of the line and they're like, how many in your party? And you're like, 1. At first that can be really intimidating, but honestly, no one seems to care because a lot of cast members will do solo days in the park themselves. And that's something to remember. They live down there. A lot of college program students especially go solo to the parks all the time. So it's not weird to say to a cast member, oh, it's like 1, it's just me or whatever. Not something to be embarrassed about, not something you're going to be judged for, because you got to remember that a lot of the people who you're talking to do it themselves. And going solo is a very common thing, so they're also used to hearing just parties of 1. Or think about the larger rides. So stereotypically, let's say Space Mountain, only dad wants to ride because mom doesn't want to ride and they have a really young kid. So dad goes on, it's just 1, it's just him. The cast member doesn't know your story, they don't know you're alone. If that's something, it should never be something to be embarrassed about, but if you are a little embarrassed about it or intimidated by going alone, just remember there's so many situations where you'd be like party of 1, beyond just going solo on a solo vacation. As for dining, that can be another place where it does get a little awkward. I have never done a sit-down table service restaurant alone, but I did encounter a lot of people doing sit-down table service restaurants alone when I worked in Disney. When I worked at the Crystal Palace as a character attendant, I would see parties of 1 all the time, and it was nothing awkward, it was nothing to be weird about. I loved striking up a conversation with them, and often the person was also more than happy to have a conversation with me too. I have heard, to be fully transparent, I have heard stories about people who maybe haven't had the best experience dining at sit-down restaurants alone in Disney, but those stories are far and in between, and it does take a lot of courage and self-confidence to do it, I'm not gonna lie. If you are concerned about dining at a table service restaurant alone, then maybe just eat at quick service restaurants. There's a ton of quick service restaurants across Disney property. A lot of them are absolutely delicious, and that is not weird at all to eat alone. alone. Just order one meal. No one even takes a second look at you when you get your table alone. Obviously, don't take up a huge table, but eating alone at a quick service restaurant is absolutely nothing to worry about at all. The table service restaurants, once again, whether or not you're comfortable with that, it was not something I was too comfortable with on my last trip when I was alone, so I decided not to. So let's talk a little bit at the pros and cons of doing a solo trip. And starting with the pros, the biggest pro and the only one I wrote down because it is so broad is that you can do what you want when you want. And this is the reason people take solo trips. You can plan your trip how you want to. You don't have to worry about anyone else's opinion. You can be totally selfish about it. You can do whatever you want, whenever you want. You can plan a bunch in advance. You can do stuff spontaneously. There's no one to argue with. There's no, well, what ride do you want to do? What ride do you want to do? It's all about what you want to do. You do not have to take anyone else's opinions into account. You are paying for this Disney trip. You can do whatever you would like to. I personally love to spend extra time taking pictures for Instagram because that's something I really enjoy, or filming extra videos, extra clips that normally I wouldn't film if I was with someone, or specialty videos focused on something very particularly. I did that all the time in my college program. I'm like, I have this video idea, and I just went to the park alone and I filmed it because I was alone in the park and I could do whatever I want to. If you want to go back to the pool in the afternoon, you totally can. If you want to eat at the same restaurant because you love this one meal 3 days in a row, you totally can. If you want to rope drop the park and normally your family likes to sleep in, you totally can. Or the opposite, if normally your family likes to rope drop but you like to sleep in, you can do that too. Now, as for the cons, there are a couple cons I wrote down here, but personally the pro of you can do what you want when you want outweighs all the cons for me. The first one is that it is going to be more expensive. This is because you're not splitting a hotel cost with someone, it's just you. And then also, if you get like a big meal or something, maybe you'd normally split that with someone else, that's just you. So there are little costs that are generally going to be more expensive. Oh gosh, there's someone outside. There are little costs that are generally going to be a little bit more expensive, and that does add up. For example, when I went with my dad, we shared one big suitcase because the airlines obviously charge a lot for suitcases, so we shared one big suitcase. When I went alone, I had to pay for that suitcase by myself. It can also sometimes be lonely, and there are different ways to help make this a little better. So some of them, my personal favorites, are to vlog. If you can vlog down in the parks, it's perfect because it's like you're talking to an audience. I love doing this because I can still share my thoughts with someone if I experienced something really cool or not so cool, or just had something I wanted to say. I shared that with the world and it ended up going on the vlog. The Disney Channel's playing on the TV. This room is perfect. So that's definitely an opportunity. If you're not a vlogger, that's totally fine. You could share it on your Instagram story, just what you're doing. So you're sharing it with other people. You could even FaceTime people while you're at the parks, or maybe at the end of the day and tell them all about your day. There's opportunities for sure to talk to other people. You can also talk to other people in the park. So sometimes if you're just like standing in line waiting seems to be the loneliest part for me of being in the parks, because there's nothing really to do while you're standing in line. So that's kind of where it hits you, where you're like, ooh, there I am alone and everyone else is chatting with their families. You can start a conversation with the people around you. This is also a great time to FaceTime your family when you're standing in line. Or another cool thing that you can do is there are Facebook groups for people who travel solo to Disney, and if you post in there, there might be someone that's willing to meet up for an afternoon if they're also going to Disney World solo. Sometimes there's solo meetups that people will arrange where a whole bunch of solo people go to the same restaurant and all dine together and get to know each other a little bit. I've never done one of the solo meetups, but my favorite part is there's no obligation to it. So you can go, enjoy your meal with people, talk to them, and then just go off solo afterwards. You don't hang out in a big group. It's just a simple meetup to talk to people for a little while. So that's definitely an option as well if you do plan on going alone and you're looking to maybe just hang out with someone for a couple hours or dining for a meal. Another con for me personally, well, it's kind of a pro and a con. The con is that there's no one to help you take photos, which for someone like me who cares a lot about that stuff, it does kind of suck when I'm like, there is nowhere to prop my camera, but this would have been a great photo spot. Oh well. At the same time, using my little shutter remote, I've gotten some of my all-time favorite Disney photos that I've ever taken, because I always feel guilty if I'm with someone who like is not maybe the best photographer or isn't really understanding my vision, taking out my little remote and using it. So I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, so being able to go alone also is a pro for me in that respect, because I can angle the camera how I want, I can take as many shots as I want for as long as I want, and I'm not constantly annoying people to take photos of me. But if you're not really into the whole taking photos of yourself alone thing, not having someone there to help take photos might also be a con. And then before we get into just questions I got on Instagram, I wanted to get into a few safety tips. Safety is something you definitely want to be concerned with. Use common sense is my best tip. Just if something feels kind of sketchy, don't do it. Use your common sense and I'm sure you'll be okay. Do not tell people you're alone. I see people do this in those Facebook groups, particularly when they're getting a button and be like, I'm celebrating my first solo trip. And although that might be fun and you can get that button, just don't wear it around. I think advertising that you're on a solo trip is just a really bad choice personally. Yes, it might start conversation, it might be a great topic, but also there might be a lot of ramifications to that. So just don't tell people you're alone. If you do get talking to someone and they ask, oh, you're alone, just be like, oh no, my family's back at the hotel, I just wanted to go to the park tonight and they wanted to relax, or something like that. Making up those little white lies isn't going to hurt anybody, but it might end up helping you. So just be aware, be prepared with whatever story it is. It does not have to be elaborate, or my family went off to do this ride when I wanted to go on this one. Something like that, where it's just a very small white lie, but just for your safety. If you are very concerned about your safety, stick with Disney. We kind of went over this before. With Disney, if you get on the Mears transportation, you're in the Disney bubble all the time. Disney transportation, there's obviously the driver and that being able to take you places. I personally find Disney hotels to be very safe locations. If you are staying at a value or moderate resort, I think it's definitely valuable to pay for a preferred room. Maybe not a deluxe resort because they tend to be smaller, but if there is a big distance to walk, definitely it might be better for your safety if you're paying for a preferred room. They also tend to be more well lit in those areas, along with just requesting a well lit area. Now, I did this on my solo trip and I was not able to get it. So I stayed at Pop Century and I got a room right next to the parking lot. That to get there, the most direct route to walk there was straight through this very dark forest part in the smoking area. And so during the day I would walk through that area because I wasn't too concerned about it, but if it was dark I would take the longer route in the well lit areas and hallways so that I was able to get where I was going staying in the light. So you can ask for that, but no guarantees. Stay in contact with your family. If you do end up Ubering, maybe go on a phone call with like one of your family members or friends or something while you're in the Uber, so you're talking to someone, or even make up a fake phone call. I do this all the time. If I'm Ubering alone, I'll pretend I'm getting a phone call and I'll be like, hey, yeah, like I'm on my way, I should be there soon, blah, 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 I'll see you then, I'm just in an Uber, whatever. I'll like make up a phone call on the spot so that it seems like I am on the phone and there's someone waiting for me and that I'm not just alone. Generally, just be aware of your surroundings. This is really important. Don't put both headphones in if you want to put headphones in, so that you're aware of the things happening around you. Make sure you're looking around you. Make sure you're not just staring at your phone all the time. Be aware of where you are and what's happening around you. Bolt the door at night. There should always be a deadbolt on the hotel room door. Use it. I did have one of those little like stopper door things from Amazon that was supposed to be great in hotel rooms, but it did not work on the doors at Pop Century. It did not fit right, so I have never actually ended up using it. So there are other safety options, or even put a chair in front of the door if you're really concerned, but that deadbolt is going to be huge. Find my friends. Just location sharing in general. You can share your location with your friends so that they know where you are. And then safety too, you are not allowed any like pepper spray or anything at Disney. I don't even think you're allowed anything like that in Canada where I am at all. But this here is what I have on my keychain, and I'm not going to pull it right now because it's really, really loud. But all you do is you pull it and it sets off a really loud alarm. So it's just a safety feature. You can get these on like Amazon. I just got mine on Amazon. It came in a pack of 2. I'll link it down below if you're interested. But you can always put that on like your backpack or your keychain or something that's like close by you. So if something does happen, pull that alarm, it'll be very loud. Okay, so now let's just get into a couple questions that I got. I'm not going to repeat the ones that I kind of have already gone over. Is there rooms with actually just one bed? I always end up with one extra bed going without use. So yes, a lot of Disney hotels do have king-size beds that are available, so that'll be the only bed in the room. These are few and far between though. That's why I like staying at Pop Century, because at Pop Century there's a queen bed and then a pull-down table bed. So you don't have to pull down the bed, and then there's this great table that you can use. It's like a very nice layout, and there's a lot of floor space too. So that's one of the reasons I like staying at Pop Century. They have the same layout now too at the other value resorts, which is really great. So if you stay at any of the All-Star resorts or Pop Century, you're gonna get this layout here, which has the table and the bed, which is really convenient if you are a solo traveler. When do you feel the loneliest? I believe I already said this, but definitely waiting in line is the loneliest time. Affordable hotels. Once again, Disney Value Resorts, in my opinion, are going to be your best bet when traveling solo, and it is worth that little bit extra that they are going to cost versus just a general Orlando hotel. How do you take cute pics by yourself? I've tried, but I'm not successful. Okay, so I do have a TikTok on this. That I will insert in right now. I'm about to ride Tower of Terror. I'm just waiting outside the gift shop, and I'm going to show you how I take solo photos. So this is just where I'm sitting right now. There's a couple people around, but not too many. There's also this garbage can right here. So all I gotta do is put my bag up against it like this, position my phone, and use my Bluetooth remote to take the photos. I just take my camera, take a whole bunch of photos, switch between wide angle and the regular lens, and then if I need to edit people out, I will, but here is the raw photos of what they look like. What do you do when you can't get your bag on a ride? So I always just travel with my little Loungefly backpack, nothing bigger. I like to travel light to the parks. So if you need to bring more stuff to the parks for whatever reason, I'd recommend renting out a locker, because if you have a bag so big that's not gonna fit on the rides, then you're probably not gonna wanna carry it around all day anyway. So there are lockers at the very front of the parks that you can rent. Otherwise, Disney, like normal size backpacks, you're gonna be able to fit on every Disney ride. Universal's a little different, but Disney rides at least, you're not gonna have an issue with bags. And then all the other questions, there's a lot of questions here asking me to go over the pros and cons, which we just did, and a ton about safety, which we've also covered. So those are all the questions I'm gonna answer. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. If you have any more questions that maybe I didn't cover or want to know anything more about traveling solo, let me know in the comments down below. But thank you so much for watching, and have a magical rest of your day.